written many, many articles that have shown up in the New York Times and Psychology Today and other publications. Since 2008, she has been a strong advocate and trainer for teaching introverts, those who sort of march to the beat of a different drum, how to make themselves be heard, or at least have people pay attention to them, and to market effectively so that they can have a great business and be of great service to their clients. And so now today, we're honored and just delighted to welcome for the first time to an AWAI bootcamp stage, Marcia Yudkin.
Some years ago, I was stranded at National Airport in Washington, D.C. My flight had been canceled because of a severe thunderstorm. While I was waiting, I called my mother. I was up on a balcony, looking down at a concourse where people were crossing every which way to get to their flights. Suddenly, I saw someone I recognized. "Mom, you won't believe this. There's Teddy Kennedy." "Go talk to him," my mother said. And while my mother, who could make a friend anywhere, anytime, was trying to persuade me to go down and talk to him, I interrupted myself again. "You won't believe this. There's Susan Collins, the senator from Maine." And 30 seconds after that, there's Olympia Snowe, the other senator from Maine. My mother was still back with Teddy Kennedy. "You know, you're his constituent. He'll be happy to talk to you." "Come on," I said. What would I say? What's the point? And why should I bother him? Many people, like my mother, think I would have had a great story to tell if I had gone down to talk to any of the senators. But I think I may have a better story, and one that's very pertinent to my theme today, not having gone down. Now, you may never be in a position where you need to decide, should you go down and talk to a famous person? For you, it might be, you gotta go to networking events, shake hands with strangers, make small talk. Or, blogging is the only way. No one succeeds as a copywriter without blogging. Or, the fastest, easiest way to get clients is cold calls. Just do it. Get over yourself. If you've been barraged by this kind of marketing advice, you may have felt, but that's not me. You may have felt, I don't know if I even want to succeed if I have to do that. If so, you're not alone. You may be one of the 25% or so of the population who are introverts. Some say it's as much as 50%. No one knows for sure. The introvert-extrovert distinction comes to us from psychologist Carl Jung, who came up with the distinction partly as a way to understand the differences between himself and his colleague Sigmund Freud. The two men were interested in the same issues and psychological phenomena, but they had vastly different ways of operating in the world. Jung was the introvert in that pair. According to Jung's definition, an introvert is someone who loses energy when they're with other people, and regains energy, recharges when they are alone. An extrovert is someone who loses energy when they're alone and gains energy being with other people. Introverts are often seen as reserved and reflective, while extroverts are often seen as outgoing and gregarious. If you're an introvert, you're in the minority. You're the odd one in this culture. Extroverts are the norm. I've been up against this my whole life because on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is least introverted and 10 is most introverted, I would be an 8, maybe an 8.5, inching up toward a 9. There aren't many places in today's world where we're told that it's okay, much less a good thing, to be an introvert. And if you're thinking, I think I'm an extrovert, so what will I get out of this talk? Stick around, because it will help you understand a client, a joint venture partner, a spouse, or a child of yours who is an introvert. It will help you communicate with anybody, regardless of their personality. You see, once you look around with informed eyes, you start to see how much marketing and marketing advice assumes we're all extroverts. It assumes that we respond the way extroverts do. A couple of years ago, I saw a promotion for a conference for bloggers called World Domination Summit. You see, you already get my point. Let's start with the name. World Domination Summit. Do you want to dominate the world? Really? That's a textbook example of hype. It's exaggeration designed to be exciting because it is not literally true. Introverts have told me again and again that they dislike hype. But it was the illustration for World Domination Summit that really caught my eye. In the picture, it showed a conference room much bigger than this one, full of people. But the thing was, you couldn't really pick out any human beings in the picture. They were just pinpricks. And it was pinpricks all the way back. That picture was chosen to be exciting and persuasive and motivating, to make me want to go to that summit. But for me, it had the opposite effect. That was my immediate visceral reaction. In one survey I did of self-identified introverts, 75% of the people in the survey said that they could pretend to be an extrovert if something important was at stake. But to go that route on a consistent basis has an enormous cost. It's stressful. We're less persuasive when we're pretending, and it doesn't change our visceral reactions. Many introverts have told me, I'd rather die than make cold calls. At this point, some well-meaning people make the problem worse. Grow up, they say. Life isn't meant to be comfortable. Or, Calling yourself an introvert is just an excuse for being a wimp. Or, you can learn to overcome being an introvert. There are pills you can take. Try anti-anxiety medication. It will help you. Or, Marcia, you can go to charm school and learn how to make small talk with a smile. Or, feel the fear and do it anyway. I see a lot of heads nodding, so you've heard that one too. I've thought a lot about that one. And based on what introverts say and how they say it, the words they use, I don't think it's fear that they're feeling. I believe it's revulsion. It's revulsion against a way of treating other people as we do not want to be treated. It's revulsion against marketing that goes against who we feel we are and who we want to be in the world. Over the last 6 or 7 years, my research on this topic has included reading books and articles about introverts, running my own surveys of people who identify themselves about introverts, and asking them how they feel about marketing in general and various marketing approaches, interviewing successful copywriters, entrepreneurs, and marketers who are introverts, and observing my own clients. I would say that over the course of 30 plus years, 70 to 75% of my clients have been introverts, which is far in excess of their incidence in the total population. So that's a lot of observation. And with that as background, let's look at 4 interrelated traits or tendencies of introverts that I believe have particular relevance for marketing. The first distinction involves large groups versus small groups. Extroverts tend to be the more the merrier people. Bigger is better. Introverts tend not to feel that way, as you know from my story about World Domination Summit. Extroverts sometimes look down on people who, as the saying goes, play small. That is, people who supposedly suppress their natural drive for big, bold goals. I don't think there's anything wrong with having modest ambitions. If you want to put your own happiness and the happiness of your family first, instead of running after big, bold goals, if those are your priorities, I salute you. The large groups versus small groups also comes up with respect to traditional networking. At traditional networking meetings, we are thrown together in a big group and expected to mill around the room and enjoy making random, superficial connections. Introverts say they feel lost in that kind of environment. I think one of the reasons that I have attracted so many introverts to myself is that I have tended to keep my own programs small. And by small, I mean 12 people or less. That's my comfort zone for group coaching and interactive workshops. Some of my introverted clients have a comfort zone that's much smaller than that. I'm thinking in particular of one woman who gave me permission to share this story with you. She was an alternative healthcare practitioner. She does Reiki. And she told me that when she thinks about marketing, to her, it means communicating with countless faceless, nameless people somewhere out there. She said, I can't even put together a sentence for an audience like that. But if you put me together face to face with one other person who is interested in Reiki, I can talk to them easily and naturally and persuasively so that they not only understand what Reiki is, but they understand how it can help them, and typically they want to sign up for a session. Great, I said. Forget about marketing. That's your marketing. So let's figure out how we can get you face-to-face, one-on-one with people who are likely to be interested in what you do as often as we can. So we sat down together and we brainstormed half a dozen ways that she could do exactly that. And at the end of the session, she told me that for the first time, she had a concept of marketing that she felt capable of and good about. The second characteristic involves small talk versus focused, purposeful conversation. As I mentioned, introverts often say they don't like small talk. Remember, what would I say? What's the point? And why should I bother him? But that doesn't mean that this is a handicap in business. Quite the contrary. Before I was a copywriter and marketing consultant, I was a freelance writer for magazines. And in that capacity, I interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of people for the articles I wrote. I was rather good at it and enjoyed it. And as a copywriter, I have used that skill again and again with my clients. I know how to pull out of them the raw material for whatever marketing piece it is they've hired me to write for them. Sometimes I have to interview the clients of my clients in order to create a testimonial for my client. So you see, it's not as if introverts are antisocial or socially inept. We just have different communication preferences. And that brings us to the third distinction: spontaneous interaction versus a designated role. Spontaneous interaction would be where you're standing online at the bank and you start a conversation with someone about nothing in particular. Interviewing someone is an example of a designated role. Introverts blossom where there is a designated role. The designated role even allows introverts to do some things that you might think are rather challenging for a quiet, reflective sort of person. For example, my very presence here today is an example of a designated role. I am the speaker. I did not get up in the middle of a crowded room and ask for your attention. Instead, you came here expecting to hear information and inspiration from me. I was introduced, and here I am. I also prepared for today's talk, which is another thing. Introverts don't like being caught off guard. We prepare so that we can say exactly what we mean to say. And I see some heads nodding, so this is getting some recognition. One introvert who listened to an early version of this talk said to me, "Put me in a room full of strangers and I contract. But give me a designated role as speaker or volunteer, and I will appear engaged and outgoing." The concept of the designated role also explains why traditional networking doesn't work so well for introverts, but structured networking can suit introverts. Some of you know of an organization called BNI. That stands for Business Networking International. They have small local chapters all over North America and in many other parts of the world. And the way BNI works is they have 16 or 17 people in a chapter, roughly that. And the idea is that they have carefully specified procedures for interacting during a meeting, and also for each member of the group to get to know each other member of the group one-on-one, one at a time. And this sort of structured networking can work very well for introverts. I have had dozens of people I have mentored as copywriters try BNI at my suggestion. And always they have gotten local copywriting clients from going to the organization, sometimes from the very first meeting. One woman who does a combination of copywriting and web design told me that she gets 100% of her clients, directly or indirectly, from BNI. The fourth distinction has to do with everything being public or having a zone of privacy. Introverts tend to care about privacy in two senses. The first is privacy of information. Many of my introvert clients are very protective of their personal information. They would get upset if I told you a story about them, even if I disguised all the details. They would see that as a betrayal. They are also concerned about the advice they hear and read that in today's world, you need to share personal stories about yourself on a blog or social media. They don't want to do that. The other aspect of privacy has to do with access. Dan Kennedy, who you'll hear from on Saturday, talks a lot in his workshops and books about the extent to which he controls access to him. You can't just call up Dan Kennedy out of the blue and shoot the breeze with him, even if you're a client. I don't think you can even find an email address or a phone number that gets to him. But that doesn't mean he is closed off. So he is having an extra workshop here on Sunday, and he invited the participants in that workshop to submit a question to him that he will do his best to answer during that workshop. And you know how you had to get the question to him? By fax. Like Dan, I don't let people call me when I'm not expecting them. I make phone appointments with clients and with prospective clients. So we have a mutually understood context of what we will talk about. We start on time, we finish on time, and in between, the client gets my full attention. I have a publicly available phone number, and it takes messages. I want you to know that not once has a client complained about this arrangement. They're fine with it. Here at boot camp, I've decided to experiment with adapting the phone appointment idea for the challenge of how I can get to know as many of you as possible while I'm here. And I'll be here through Sunday. I know that AWAI has set up mixers and events to get us milling around with each other. And I'll tell you frankly that I am not at my best in a noisy, crowded room. So I would rather give you my full attention. So I have a sign-up sheet here for people to sign up for 10 minutes with me, during which time it'll be just the two of us. As for the zone of privacy, some people say to introverts, come out of your shell. Tear down that wall around you. I say no. You can keep the wall as long as there is a way to communicate through or despite the wall, just as with Dan Kennedy. And to symbolize this, on my website and elsewhere, I chose the image of a stone wall like the kind we have everywhere in the woods in my part of New England. Many people think that these stone walls were built to keep something in or out. According to historians, however, that's not what happened. What happened was that 200 years ago, when the settlers first started to farm the land, they had to not only cut down all the trees, but also dig up all the rocks that were left behind by the glaciers 10,000 years ago. And they moved all the rocks to the perimeter of their property. Later, the stones were neatened up into stone walls, and they came to mark the boundary between one family's property and another family's property. So in my picture, the stone wall stands for the introvert's boundary of their zone of privacy. And you'll notice that there's a break in the wall. And through the break in the wall comes a ray of sunshine. That's the communication that is still possible for the introvert. The wall does not have to come down. Conventional marketing advice says that when we're in business, we must meet customers' expectations. Now that sounds reasonable. The problem is that sometimes we have a narrow, stereotypical, and mistaken idea of what those expectations are. So, for example, I've heard this said about introverts. No one wants to do business with a wallflower. Is that true? Well, let's take the pejorative connotations out of that statement and look at it again. No one wants to do business with someone who is thoughtful, reflective, and who listens more than they talk. Now, if I think about the qualities that I want in, let's say, a doctor, or even a used car salesperson, I want someone who listens and who responds to what I say. I don't care if they have incredible charisma or they're off the charts of some likability scale. What good is that to me? And it's the same with us. In 2009, the organization RAIN Today did a survey of people who hire professional service providers. And in answer to one of the questions of what bothers you most about professional service providers, and we copywriters are professional service providers. So 38% of the people in the survey said their biggest complaint was, service provider did not listen to me. And 55% of people in the survey said they would rather do business with someone who was a better listener. When I asked people in one of my surveys who are introverts which qualities they feel serve them best in their business, good listening was one of the top 3 traits mentioned. The other 2 were creativity and trustworthiness. There certainly are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of copywriting clients out there who value good listening, creativity, and trustworthiness. We quiet people have our fans, and let's not forget that. Let's turn now to actual introverted copywriters and the marketing techniques they used to become successful. Here's Cheryl Landis. Cheryl is a technical writer and a technical copywriter. Cheryl's main marketing technique is making connections. She goes to meetings, and the meetings include organizations like Chick Tech, Women in Technology International, and Van Techie, where the Van stands for Vancouver, Washington, which is where she lives. Cheryl says, when I go to meetings, I focus on meeting just 1 or 2 other people. We exchange contact information, and I keep in touch, but my communication is not to sell my services. I follow up by saying it was nice to meet them, and I would like to stay in touch. If I find information that I think would interest them, I will send it along to them and periodically check in to say hello. It's about developing relationships, not collecting as many business cards as possible. Cheryl gets 90% of her client projects through that process. Here's Catherine Aragon. Some of you may know her. She's a copywriter, and she's been here to boot camp. Here's what Catherine told me. When I was starting my business, I was told to attend a lot of networking and shake a lot of hands. For an introvert, that's the worst possible advice. If I'm uncomfortable, I may be perceived as an awkward geek rather than a high-value consultant. I was also tired of people calling for my services, she says, and making me jump through hoops to prove that I could do the job. So I set out to create a situation where my ideal clients would find me, and rather than require me to convince them of my skills, have them be ready to hire me when they call. So Catherine adopted a mix of content marketing and social media. She posts, she blogs, does guest blogging, publishes her own newsletter, and posts on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn, not only about her own ideas, but also about other people's ideas. Here's Hanneke Dijstermaat. I think I skipped one person. No? Okay. Here's Hanneke Dijstermaat. She's a copywriter from the Netherlands who's now based in the UK. Some of you may know her from her articles for Copyblogger. Hanneke told me she can't stand networking, cold calling, or blogger outreach. I asked her what's blogger outreach, and she said that's where you email someone requesting a link or a social media share. Hanneke does not have a Facebook account, and she uses social media very little. Instead, she focuses on creating content and building an email list of people who know her and respect her. If people who contact her already know her work, then she says, I feel less pressure to prove myself. That's similar to something that Catherine said, and it's something our next example also brought up. Here's Nick Osborne. When I interviewed Nick a couple of years ago, he said, I'm not sure I'm an introvert, but I am a bit of a hermit. According to Jung's definition, Nick would be an introvert because there's no such thing as an extroverted hermit. Nick told me that he doesn't like to blow his own horn, so he doesn't. In all the time he's been in business, he's never made a cold call or written an email prospecting for business. Not once. In Nick's words, I never ask for work, and this means I never have to make outrageous claims about myself. I seed the marketplace with my articles, books, speaking engagements, etc. I get out there a lot and have built the impression that I'm very good at what I do. I don't make that claim, but I don't mind people coming to that conclusion. Both Henneke and Nick concentrate on what is called inbound marketing, seeding the marketplace so people come to you. Introverts tend to dislike any form of marketing that's pushy or aggressive. And with inbound marketing, that bypasses all of that. It allows the client to make the choice on their own. I should also point out that many people assume that building a reputation and using inbound marketing is something that you can do only if you're already well-known and well-established. But both Henneke and Nick used this strategy right from the start. Now, you might think also that this is something that could have worked in the past but wouldn't work today. Nick did get his start quite a while ago, as you know, but that's not true for Henneke. So inbound marketing can work for beginners, and it can work today. Here's Bob Bly. Bob is not here this year, but most of you know who he is. Bob is definitely an introvert. He prefers to stay at home, he dislikes crowds, and he finds small talk terrifying. That's his word. When Paul Hollingshead interviewed him, Paul said, Bob, you're an introvert, yet when you come to boot camp, you're one of the funniest, most energetic, and popular speakers we have. How do you explain it? Does Bob Bly have a split personality? And Bob replied, to me, it's easier to talk and socialize at boot camp because I'm one of the speakers. So people come up to me, I don't have to I'll go up to them. And that's exactly what I said earlier about introverts flourishing when they have a designated role. Here's Jason Fladwine. This is a fun point. Jason is a copywriter who I ran into on the Warrior Forum some years back. And Jason said that his copywriting career was going nowhere until he wrote a couple of reports on copywriting and put them up for sale on the Warrior Forum and somewhere else. And he said suddenly people were buying his reports, and then they came to him and said, hey, you seem to know a lot about this stuff. What would you charge to write a sales letter for me? He said, what a weird world we live in, where the way to get copywriting clients is not to go out and ask people to hire you, but to write reports on copywriting. Well, creating content is something that probably everyone in this room can do, introvert or extrovert, but it's particularly suitable for introverts. And here's Ivan Meisner. He is the creator of BNI. He's not a copywriter, but I wanted to pass along one thing that Ivan Meisner said. He said that he started the organization because he knew that he did not feel comfortable speaking with strangers. So he created an organization that would have a structure that would not require people to talk to strangers in order to get business. And in 2009, 20 years after he organized the organization, he realized that he's an introvert and that he had created an organization that would work for introverts. He had no idea at the time. And finally, there's me. So what introvert-friendly activities did I use to become successful? I used a lot of marketing activities, and I just want to mention a few that have not come up so much so far in today's discussion. The first is that I taught one-night workshops on marketing and writing at adult education centers all over New England. I did this for 12 years, 3 times a month. I also spoke a lot for organizations of management consultants, image consultants, authors, speakers, chambers of commerce, and women's business groups. And I want to tell you what happened in the adult education classes. I would be up in the front of the classroom, and it would be 5 minutes of 7, and we were waiting to start the class at 7, and I had not opened my mouth yet. And very often, someone would stand up from within the classroom and come up to me and say, "I would like to hire you." I hadn't even opened my mouth. That's the power of the designated role of being a teacher. So when I moved out to the woods of Western Massachusetts, I continued doing the workshops and speaking, but mostly on a virtual basis. So that means participating in teleseminars and telesummits, whether they were organized by other people or by myself. What I would do with the people in the workshop is I would do my best to get them to sign up for my mailing list, which brings me to the second technique I used, direct mail. I would send out postcards 4 to 6 times a year. The postcards would mostly pitch workshops that I organized myself. But people would also call me up after receiving the postcards and say, "Can I hire you to write some copy for me?" So I became an expert on all the regulations for sending out direct mail and how to get postcards printed up cost effectively, and of course how to write the postcards. Many of my mentorees used direct mail to launch themselves in business as a copywriter. So what they would do would be to pick a niche, usually based on their previous professional experience, and rent a list for that niche, and send out a postcard with a low-cost, low-risk special offer that was especially appealing for that niche. And the way these postcards work is that you only need to get 1 or 2 yeses to earn back what you spent on the postcard mailing and to be off and running, making money from clients. The third technique that I used, I call online schmoozing, which is participating in online discussions on email lists or online forums. I did that a lot in the early years of the World Wide Web. And for several years, I was the official moderator for a very influential online marketing forum. So that was tremendous visibility. And you might wonder, well, how could I be good at and enjoy online schmoozing when I don't like small talk? Well, the answer is that in the online context, there is no small talk. Or, better said, you can get away without the small talk. The pithier and more direct and more useful and more interesting you are in that setting, the better. And those are introvert strengths. And fourth, I created a website containing lots and lots of useful information. And earlier, you heard Ben Settle say that that's how he got started as a copywriter. He just went to Google, typed in copywriting. He came to my website. And before one of the infamous Google updates, I was getting 3,000 visitors a day to my website. So typically, people would sign up for my newsletter, and after being on my list and hearing from me once a week, like clockwork on Wednesdays, they would want to hire me to write copy or something else. And sometimes it would take years of them being on the list, but it would happen. I have never had a blog. Why? It's partly related to being an introvert, but there are other reasons as well. I've created a special page for people here at the conference and those listening virtually, where you can find resources related to today's talk. So you can find my page on why I don't have a blog. You can find my page on what I came up with for the Reiki practitioner. And you can find links to my introvert surveys. And you can download a free copy of an ebook I wrote called Top 10 Ways to Get Your Copywriting Business Off the Ground. So that is not theory. It's what I did was I went back through and tabulated how each of my mentorees had gotten their business started and then presented that in this ebook along with various advice. So all the freebies are available at www.yudkin.com/awai.htm. So let me recap. The whole point is to get in touch with who you are, your values, and your personality. Choose the marketing activities that are consistent with that. Your choice of marketing activities will be different from mine and different from his or hers. John F. Kennedy said, "The only reason to give a speech is to change the world." In this speech, I'm inviting you to change your world. If you adopt the approach that I've described, you change your world. It becomes less stressful and more a world of options than of musts or shoulds. You also change the world around you. By being yourself in your marketing, you enlarge other people's ideas of what is possible. You help make the world more welcoming for yourself and for other introverts, or for anyone who's different. If you've been struggling with a marketing approach that does not work for you, give it up. Replace it with something that feels more comfortable, more natural, more authentically you. No one in this room needs a personality transplant to succeed as a copywriter. Use the examples I've given you to create your own version of marketing for introverts. I can't wait to find out how it works for you. Email me, though. Don't call.